All right, so this is the third video in the series that I'm doing on creating PBR textures and materials in CryEngine. In the first two videos, I covered doing rusty metal and mossy wood. In this next one, I'm going to go over rocks and kind of terrain stuff. What I'm using here, as you can see, is a rock, um, but the same principles, the same workflow applies to terrain layers. So the materials that you'd use to paint on the terrain, same exact concepts apply. Okay, so um, in the previous video, I kind of covered about how to make the diffuse, the speculars, and all your gloss maps, which are the same in this one. You go ahead and just pull up the. Apologize, I should this up. This is this is the texture that's actually for this. Um, same things. We're going to create our diffuse channel, our spec channel, and then our normal map. The big thing with terrain textures and natural kind of objects like rocks and things like that is it's now absolutely critical that you have a detail map in there. I'll explain exactly what a detail map is, how you create it, and we'll walk through that process. So we'll go ahead and just jump over into Photoshop real quick, and I'll show you how we make our diffuse map. So these are the textures we're going to be using. I've got this kind of this repeating stone texture and this moss that I kind of want to apply over the surface to help break it up. So I've got these other two layers in here, and gonna these are the original ones that I use that you see in there. So if I ever need a reference back, we can do that. So I'm gonna group the stone and moss. I'm gonna name this stone. This one moss. Select those, group them together. And this will be our. All right, so we'll go ahead and start with stone. Okay, so same thing as before. It's very important that you look at the values. Excuse me. The values on the cheat sheets to figure out where it needs to fall. Rock, you can see here, is in this range. Now let me zoom in. Okay, so the they're using about 0.33, which is on a 0 to 1 scale. So they're basically using 33% gray for this rock texture. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. Now, this is in color, obviously. So let's just create the reference texture. I'm going to create a new layer. Control Shift N is the hotkey for that. I'm going to use my marquee selection tool, draw a box, and in my color value, I'm going to change my percent. Go ahead and fill that, which is just Alt backspace, or you can do Edit Fill with foreground color, which is going to be the color swatch that's on. So now that I've got my reference value, I have no idea if this is even close, if it's far off or anything, because it's hard to tell the difference between grayscale and color. So to make this real easy, I'm going to do two things. First, I'm going to create my levels adjustment. This is what I'm ultimately going to be controlling, and a hue saturation. Reduce my saturation all the way down, so now it's much easier for me to tell where I'm at, which very apparent. My rock texture is too bright. I'm going to go to my levels, reduce the top till it gets to a point where it blends close enough. Which I want my white point, which is the brightest part of the texture, to be close, which that looks more correct. So I'm going to go ahead and just select my reference, hue saturation, get rid of them. So this now should be what I need for my rock texture. Go ahead and save this out. And rock, let's name this diffuse high quality. And we'll jump over. This is the one that we're going to be hooking up, which is right here. I'm going to go ahead and reduce my gloss because I don't want that to interfere with what I'm seeing, and my spec map. I'm going to jump over to my diffuse and go ahead and load Rocks PBR Diff. So there we go. And that actually doesn't look too bad. Um, and kind of the areas that I'm looking at, which tells me this isn't too bad, is the dark spots aren't too dark, and the bright spots aren't too bright. So that means that the image is pretty close and pretty balanced. Okay, so I don't like, as you can see in the original, I don't particularly like this. It's more of a sandstone color. I don't like that, so let's just go in real fast and do some coloration adjustment. So I'll do a hue saturation, and I'm going to take my reds, shift them more, now shift them more blue, reduce it a little bit more. Let's hide the levels real fast just so I can see what's going on here. Not quite doing what I want with hue saturation, so I'm going to get rid of that. Let's do a color balance instead. So my midtones, I push more blue. Shadows, be the darker areas. A little bit. We'll go back to highlights. That's actually not too bad right there. Okay, so overall color is probably just still a little bit too hot, a little bit too intense. So I'm going to reduce my saturation, bring back my levels since that's what I need. Place it over the top. I definitely need my levels. What I did here real fast, just so you can see, with the levels being on the bottom, the color balance and the hue saturation applying after my levels, which is what I don't want. I want the overall level. I want the color on the rocks first, and then I want to adjust my level. So that's why I moved it on top of the hierarchy. So we'll go ahead and save this out. Rocks PBR Diff. And that looks like. Okay, so definitely much better on the coloration part. Probably needs to be a little bit brighter, but we might actually get some of that brightness back with specs. So because rocks are pretty flat and I don't have like glossy surface over the top or anything, I'm not going to worry about using a special spec map. I showed this in the previous videos. Kind of a good trick for this is reusing your diffuse map. So just copy the path from your diffuse, paste it into your spec channel, and then we'll bump up our. See that it actually is kind of bringing a little bit of coloration back to it, a lot more than it was, and boosting up the highlights a little bit. So I'm happy with that. Let's just leave that in there for now. And the final step is to just add a little bit of moss. So here's my repeating moss texture. I know already that it's too bright and it's too saturated, so I'm going to do a levels adjustment. Pull it down just a little bit more. Desaturate it a little bit. For those of you that are kind of new to PBR, the easiest way to figure this out is I'm going to use my reference chart here and realize that most of these things are going to be kind of in the 25% gray mark area. So I could go in there, create a new layer, select it, add the gray value, desaturate this, get it close. That's probably, again, if you're starting out, that's probably going to be the easiest way to do it. Otherwise, you can kind of guess a little bit, which in this case, this should bring me close to what I need to be. Uh, and then the last step is I'm going to just create a layer mask here. And what I did is essentially just took um, a brush that brush tab. So I just use this brush that's kind of semi-hard edged like this, and in shape dynamics, turned on size jitter and angle jitter. And what that's going to do is it's going to help break up the surface. So I'll run this real fast just to get me a little bit of moss breakup. He brings some back. All I'm doing here is I'm actually painting this into the layer mask, which I created, and just switching the hotkey is X between my foreground background color. Black obviously hides, white shows. Hence how I'm kind of getting this. So I'll get something kind of rough, just so it works. Just again, just a little bit of breakup. Come back in. Maybe I'll just use a secondary, something like this. Shape dynamic, same thing. Size jitter, angle jitter. Go ahead and just hide a little bit first. Get something rough. Switch back over to showing more of the moss back. Back. Off. And something like that. So that essentially is just the process that I've used before, just to create the mask. Now I'm going to delete this since I already created one. What I'm going to do is just I'm control left clicking on layer mask for this one, which I already created, and just going to apply it to. So that's what I eventually ended up with. Again, artistic preference, interpretation. If you want more or less, you can just you can come back in here, say that paint a little bit more, or fade it out a little bit more. Whatever floats your boat. Okay, so I'm going to use that. Save this out. This should call it good on diffuse map. Save it out. Let that load, and that is looking pretty good. Okay, so this is what I was talking about earlier on today about, because I don't have a bump map or a detail map, you can kind of see the effect here where the rock just looks kind of, I guess it looks more like a piece of chalk. If you notice, like it looks kind of smooth. It looks um, like a piece of chalk. I don't know how to better describe that. It's not how rocks should look. And the way that we're going to fix that is by our bump map and our detail map, because obviously gloss map's not going to do a whole lot for us. So let's go ahead and we'll hit out the normal map, the detail map. So that's done. I don't need to worry about that. Now in this case, I'm not going to show the way that the normal map was created for this particular rock. This rock was done in ZBrush. In fact, actually by one of the artists on our team, Matt, I believe, was the one who did this. And what he did is he extracted the normal map from the ZBrush sculpt. So what we ended up with was this. So that's actually from the high-res sculpt. And then all we've done is gone in and added this over the top of it. This is simply just a rock texture, just kind of generic. And it's been reduced. So for example, I'll show you real fast how we could make that. It's just a gloss, because rocks are kind of generic. It's not really important. So sorry, it's not incredibly important to have it very specific. You always can, but in this case, I'm just going to take let's take stone 3. set it at 16-bit. B, and it's over. Okay. So I'm just going to use this real fast and show you how we can get to this effect. So Stone 3, do hue saturation, completely remove all the saturation. I'm going to do a levels adjustment, reduce my brightness, bring up my face a little bit. That should be my gloss. To select all, Control A, or select all. Control Shift C is going to copy merge, so everything that's visible is the same as here. Edit, copy merged. Go to my alpha channel. That's our gloss map. Go back to my RGB. I'm going to hide my stone texture and save this out, just so you can kind of see what that affects. Okay, that's actually a good point. So let me back up and show you how to fix this error. So sometimes some things export out of, say, like Photoshop or high-res bake. There's times where you will get this error where it says texture contains serially denormal vectors. Say yes because I want to save it out. And this is probably fine to use. However, the way that you fix this is take your normal map texture, want to duplicate it, Control J, or drag it onto here. And if you have Xnormal installed, Xnormal will install the Photoshop plugins. There's one here that says normalize. Run it. Go. You can see the difference. It just fixed the blown out values. That's it. So I'll hide the original, save it out again. Texture. No error. That's how you fix that. You'll probably run into that a lot, especially if you're baking out of ZBrush or high-res sculpt. Come in here, bump map. Nope. Okay, so traditionally this is where you could stop. Detail maps weren't necessary, but again, we still have that chalky kind of look to it. It's not as crisp or as detailed as we'd like to. So next process is to create a, a detail map. So I'm going to pull up real fast this. This is from the CryDocs. This talks about everything about the unified detail mapping. I'm going to skip over the important part I need. So to create a unified detail map, you need to put your AO bake of the scope in the red channel. Now they do mention it in here too, but you need to make sure it's reduced, which I'll show you. The luminosity at least reduced. We've got our normal map red channel to the green channel, our unified detail map. The gloss map of our sculpt, blue channel, and our normal map in the green channel. So I'm just going to pull that off screen. And this is in the CryDocs. If you just search for unified detail mapping, it will pop up. So, okay. So I'm going to minimize these. I'm going to need my map. And what I'm going to do is, let me see what this document says. It's 2048. Big thing with unified detail map is to make sure that when you're saving it out, that it's reduced to 512. You'll do that in the exporter, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to work native to the textures that I have, which in this case, I'm going to create a new document, 48 by 2048, 16-bit. This is going to be start. Okay, so first things first, we need to put the AO bake of the sculpt in red channel. So you go ahead and load AO. should be it. Okay, so this is the ambient occlusion map. Again, this exported out with the ZBrush Bake. So this works in conjunction with our normal map. So what I'm going to do is I need to take the whole AO. So I'm going to select all of it. Control Shift C. Unified detail map. I'm going to select my red channel. So it should just have the eye on it and paste. There we go. Layers lock. So double click it just to unlock it. Control A, Control C. Here, red channel, Control V. And look. Yep, there we go. So there's our AO map. So if we switch back to RGB, it looks terrible. But this is what I need to be worried about. Okay, so the ambient occlusion map is in our red channel. The next step is a levels adjustment. So we're going to have to do Control L for levels, or you can go to Image, Adjustment, Levels, and we need to take this value of 255 and reduce it to 128 every time. That's not a guess number, that's a constant number. So your ambient occlusion map needs to be at. Okay, so ambient occlusion map is in. Don't worry about that. And the next is we need the red channel of our normal map. So I'm going to select the red channel. Gives me this. Control A, Control C to copy here, and this needs to be applied into the red channel. Oh, I'm sorry, the green channel. The red channel of the normal map into the green channel of the unified detail. We'll go back to rocks. Gloss channel, same thing. Control A, C. Gloss map is going to be blue channel, B. And I need to add the alpha, which is the green channel of normal map. Control A, Control C, and paste in the. There we go. So this is what your final map will look like, something to this effect. And again, we have red channel, we have our ambient occlusion. Green channel, we have our red channel of our normal map. The blue channel, we have our gloss map. And in the alpha, we have the green channel. So we'll go ahead and save this out. And that's it. That is the process of creating a unified detail map. So just a lot of copy and pasting. Should be it. Okay, so this is what I meant by the save out settings. I did that wrong. When you go to save out your detail map, you need to have it as underscore detail. Click save. When it pops up the export window, it is absolutely imperative that you lower your resolution to 512. And Crytek even mentions in the CryDocs that using anything above a 512 for a detail map is terrible. It will just tank performance fast. Okay, so this defaults to diffuse low quality. I've already reduced it to 512. Because we added that underscore detail to the end, I get these, a detail texture and a merge map. I'm going to save it as merge detail map high quality because a detail map is usually just, it's slightly different, but because of the setup that we had in all of our channels, we have to use the merge detail map high quality. Go ahead and save that out here, and we're going to place it in detail. And happen. Got to make sure that you actually select your detail mapping in your shader gen print. There we go. So you can see it adds a bit more detail to it, a little bit more depth. Now I can go back in and adjust these parameters so it looks, the normal map is intense. the diffuse. See that it's uh, the detailed diffuse scale is actually what's kind of multiplying the ambient occlusion. So if it's a 0, there's no ambient occlusion. If you look kind of in this area, you'll see it greatest. That will pull our ambient occlusion map details, and then the gloss scale isn't going to matter because it's using the same as our bump map, which it's so dark anyways. You're probably not going to. So there you go. That is how grain textures, rocks. That is the way to do it. So again, the important part here is reuse your diffuse map in your specular if you don't require a specialized spec map, and absolutely critical that you create a merged, a unified detail map for the material. Hope that helps. So I'll see you guys on the last one. Thanks.